So, hi, that's me. I am Irish Girl on Twitter. You can tweet me anytime you want. You guys know the hashtag for the summit. That's cool. I put the Twitter information for Still Kickin' on there because when I use this photo, I've heard people say it's confusing because they can't tell what the t-shirt says. It says Still Kickin'. Still Kickin' is a nonprofit that my sister and I started after her husband died 3 years ago. So it's a super cool nonprofit. Look it up. It's awesome. So first I want to thank Brett and Carl and everyone at the Bureau for gathering this community, Brett especially for coming up with this idea 5 years ago. I think it's really important for project managers because this can be a very lonely role. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we rarely get to work with each other on a project. We rarely have even 5 minutes to compare notes with each other about like, how do you do this? Are you struggling with this? Like, we're so busy working in the job that we rarely have time to keep our brains on the job. And so what this 2 days should be for you is an opportunity to get your brain up and out of being in the job and think about being on the job. Think about the bigger picture of what you want to be, where you want to go, how you want to do this work. So these 2 days really are a gift. Don't squander that gift. Your email is going to be there tomorrow. All of us will not, right? So those regional breakouts, the ability to just talk to people in the hallways, like that is a really precious thing that you get very rarely as a project manager, and it's really valuable. And the same is true of a leadership role. I'm gonna talk more about this morning, but leadership is a lonely role too, right? There are many times in which you just sort of have to stand alone. And that's true of project managers too. So take advantage of this time that you have with each other and know that whatever is happening with your project, whatever dumpster fire is happening back at the office, it'll still be burning tomorrow, all right? So just let it go, let it go. Okay, so take advantage of every minute. I'm not gonna talk too much about kind of my career path because we were able to spend a lot of time yesterday kind of talking about that, but these are some of the titles that I've had over the course of my career. And in 2000, I mentioned, I got my first job in digital. Dave Pryor mentioned this yesterday. Back then we just called it the web. So I worked at a web shop. And I mentioned that I felt like I'd really found my people. I also felt like I had found the perfect role for myself. It was like a little bit strategy, and it was a little bit creative, and it was a little bit technical, and I got to orchestrate the production of these really complicated and cool projects. And the problem was it came easily to me. And the reason why that's a problem is because for a very long time, I thought any dummy could do this job. I really did. I was just like, I spent a lot of time thinking like, what am I gonna be when I grow up? Because this job, like, well, anybody could do it. It took me a really long time to realize that the things that we do on projects every day are really specific skills that not everyone has. So part of what I wanna do today is help illuminate those things for you that are a little bit invisible and help you see how those things make you a leader, because it took me a really long time to see that. And part of the goal of writing this book was I had so many people asking me, like, how do I get into this job? What kind of person is good at this job? And so it was an attempt to really define what is this job when done well, and what kind of person really excels at this job. So I mentioned also that I joined Clockwork 11 years ago, and my title was managing director, and I did all the things like the garbage and everything. One of the things that I realized after taking on the role of COO and starting to interact with other leaders at other companies was that I only one time so far in my 3 years of doing this job have I met a person who came from a project management background or said they came from a project management background. And I thought, that's weird. We're leaders. Why don't more of us end up in these roles? And I think there's a lot of things that are in the way of us seeing ourselves as leaders, and a lot of things in the way of organizations seeing us as leaders. And I want to help you see that today. I want to help you see the ways in which you are a leader and all the ways in which in your job right now, every day, you can show up as a leader. And I'm hoping that in the long term, it helps you start to think about the ways that you can level up your career in the long term. So when I did some practice runs with some colleagues, one of my coworkers said, I really liked the content of your presentation, but it made me kind of anxious because I didn't know where we were. And so so I'm like, okay, little project manager, I'm gonna give you an outline. So our statement of work for the next probably more like 40 minutes now is project management is a leadership role. I'm gonna give you 4 assumptions, 2 definitions, 8 features. So you're gonna know where we are, okay? Okay, so let's start with our 4 assumptions. Assumption number 1, you're good at your job. Here's what I mean by that. I'm not gonna talk to you today about the mechanics of being a project manager, but it is absolutely critical. Like all of the things like communication and timelines and project planning, those are really essential things. No matter what the process is that you follow in your agency, those are like table stakes essential things. You can be a good leader, but without the executional aspects of this, you will not be a good project manager. So I'm not gonna talk to you about that today. But if you are sitting here and you don't feel confident that you're good at your job yet, that's okay. That's what conferences like this are for. There are many ways for you to level up those skills too. All I'm trying to say is you need both of them in equal amount, or you won't be able to move on. You gotta nail the basics of the job. So my first assumption is that I am moving forward as if you are good at the mechanics of your job. And if you're not, find ways to get good at it. Sometimes that's just experience, sometimes that's education, often it's just practice and making a lot of mistakes. Assumption number 2, this is a quote if you were at the DPM Summit 5 years ago. I used this same quote. I use it all the time because I think it's brilliant. Most engineers don't know what a project manager does, and if they do, they don't know what a good one looks like. Crap project managers have ruined the reputation of the gig. This is so true. People don't know what we do, and most of their conceptions of what we do is based on their bad experiences with people who do what we do. Part of this is just human nature, right? We are biologically hardwired to remember bad experiences more than good experiences. This is just a survival technique. So it's not just that people are willfully trying to dislike us, it's that it's just hard to remember good stuff, it's easier to remember bad stuff. That's why Oprah tells us all to keep a gratitude journal of things that you're grateful for during the day. Right, which kind of makes me roll my eyes, but it's really important. I forget the good stuff all the time. We as project managers are problem solvers, which means what we seek out always is problems. And you know what you can always find if you look for them? Problems. So you really, really have to take the time to look for and appreciate the good things. So this is also true about designers. This is from, and I'll share the slides so you can have links to all these articles that I'm quoting from. This is from a newsletter that Julie Zhou, who's a VP of product at Facebook, writes, and she did a 2-part series on what to expect from your project manager. So I argue with my PM all the time. Sometimes I think he doesn't care about design, and he treats me like an on-demand mock-up factory. Is this kind of healthy tension normal? That means I hate my PM. Is this normal? So people don't know what we do, and they often don't. They don't remember good things about it. This also is a slide that I used 5 years ago that is still relevant today. So this is me, unattributed quote to myself. When I started to think about why is it that people don't really get what we do and they only remember the bad things, I thought it can't just be this biology thing. There's got to be something else to it. And when I really started to think about it, I realized when we are doing our jobs really, really well, it's almost invisible. And so it is exactly the same as breathing. We breathe in and out unconsciously all the time, all day long. And the only time we notice it, I don't know if any of you guys had this experience, but when I walked into the casino, I've only maybe seen one person actually smoking, but when I walked in, I was like, oh, there's parts of the hotel that smell a little bit like an ashtray. Did I notice the other 12 hours of my day in which breathing was super pleasant, including being on an airplane 10,000 feet in the sky, hurtling through space, breathing because technology? No. I only noticed when I was like, what's that smell? Okay, so That's what project management is, okay? People don't see it when like we're just making things happen, right? The meetings are happening, there's your status, you need the PDF, you need the PSD, yeah. They only notice it when it's like, why am I in this meeting? There's no agenda, it sucks, why is it, like, right? So this is assumption number 3, that this is true, that people just don't notice it, because when we are kicking ass, it's hard to see. And then assumption number 4 we talked about yesterday, which is there's really not a clear career path. Like we can go all kinds of different directions. You know, when you think about Martine's kind of T-shaped person, how we round out that T can be really different from person to person, and what job or role we end up going into can be really different. So because there's not a clear career path, we have to forge that on our own. No one's gonna hand it to us, no one's gonna show us the path, we have to make our own way. And project management is often really underestimated by leadership and organizations. We heard this in the Q&A yesterday. What do I do if I'm in an organization where they don't respect PMs, where they don't understand what I do? So we get underestimated as a tactical role. And in my opinion, companies are really overlooking a potential gold mine for future leaders in all of us, because they have trouble pointing to what we do. Because we're like air quality, remember? When we're awesome, people don't see us. So you have to be your own best advocate. And when you see yourself as a leader and you know what your skills are, you're gonna be better able to spot opportunities in your career, and you're gonna have the confidence to go after them. So in summary, you're good at your job. Most people don't know what we do. When we're doing our job well, it's hard for others to see, and there is no career path. So to quote Amanda, quoting a cartoonist, this is fine, everything's great. Okay, so now let's go into the 2 definitions that I want to share with you. And this is about leadership versus management. So I tried to distill down, and like all the things I've read and experienced, I tried to distill this down into the fewest possible words, and this is what I came up with. Leaders inspire people to move toward a vision, and managers make sure we all get there. Right, the leader is the person who's like, we're going there. It's in that direction. I don't know how we're gonna get there. And all of us are like, yeah, we're going there. I wanna follow you. And then the manager is the person who's like, here's your map, here's some snacks, here's a backpack, like, right? Like the manager is the person who actually makes sure we get there and we make the right progress that we need to make. So anyone who knows me well or even not well knows that I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings. The books and the movies. Feel free to talk to me about it later. We can also talk about the dumpster fire of The Hobbit. Let's not. Okay, so when I thought about this through the Lord of the Rings lens, which if you haven't seen, I mean, just set aside 11 to 12 hours of your life, and you can borrow the DVDs from me, extended editions, obviously. Okay, so if you think about this, Gandalf is the leader, right? Gandalf is the one who says, there is a major issue. We need to get this ring to Mordor. He gathers together the Fellowship of the Ring, which is a typical project team, right? Like conflicting goals, personalities, people who have never met, but he gets them all to say, yes, we're gonna set aside all of our differences, and yes, we need to get that ring to Mordor. Great idea, Gandalf, we're gonna do this. Gandalf pieces out, and what happens? Everything falls apart. Sean Bean is dead in the forest, and like everybody's fighting. It's chaos. It's awful, right? So Frodo and Samwise, they end up kind of breaking off from the group, and Sam really is the person who emerges as the manager, right? Look at that backpack. That is a prepared project manager. He is ready for any, like, this is risk mitigation at its best. Like, he's got a pan, he's got the lembas bread, he's got the packs, he's got everything, he's got the plan, right? But there are elements of leadership to good management. So I pray to God you've seen this movie, because if you haven't, you're like, I don't know what this lady's talking about. But during the journey, right, there are periods of time where the weight of the ring is so heavy that Frodo wants to give up. He's like, let's just go back to the Shire, where it's nice, and we live in a little hole in the ground, and everything's round. I don't like this place, right? And Sam is the one who rallies him, and who said, like, this is one of my favorite quotes. He says, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. That, to me, is great leadership and great management. Like, we can't carry our teams. They have to do the work. They have to make the designs. They have to do the sprints. They have to write the code. They have to do the testing. We can't do that stuff for them, but we can carry them. And when we're doing our job in the best possible way, that's exactly what we're doing. So leaders are leaders. Manager is literally in the title of what we do, but we are also leaders. So here's me with an attributed quote to myself, because now I'm like that guy in the video Amanda showed us. I'm just quoting myself, people. So project management is a leadership role. Management is in our job title, but we are leaders. The going gets rough, and it's our job to rally the team. When everyone else is freaking out, we're the ones that have to keep our cool. When it feels like all hope is lost, we are the ones who light the way. So that quote, that I shared with you, I can't carry it for you, I can carry you. Our equivalent of that is like, I can't write the code, but I'll order you pizza. It's slightly less inspiring, but still meaningful, right? Okay, so those are our two definitions. Let's get into the features. Now, are there other features of a leader? Yes. You could think of this as the MVP for you as a leader, right? We're going to start with 8 core features. We're going to iterate. Next year, we might add some more, okay? Let's just try to deliver this first one. Okay, feature number 1, teach people how to treat you and your team. So this is about how we build relationships and whether those relationships are healthy or whether those relationships are abusive. With every interaction that you have, you are teaching people how to treat you and how to treat your team. So here's how I most often see this show up on a project. You've got that client who emails you like 47 times a day, right? Like every time they have a thought, they're like, thought. And every email they send you has those 2 annoying exclamation point, like, this is high priority, right? Everything, 47 times a day. If you, as the project manager, are responding every 47 times that they email you, you are teaching them that that cycle is okay. And they are learning that. And if you take that away from them, that is going to feel very bad to them. So in this example, what I have done is I let all of that come in, and then I reply in bulk. So I may take 23 of the 47 and send an email at noon, like, hey, just addressing those points you emailed me about today, here's what's up. Or, hey, took all those 47 emails you sent me, put those into Jira, here's where you can see where that stuff is at. Like, I don't know what the exact solution is for you. What I'm telling you is that when you interact with a client or team members, you're teaching people what's okay. And think about what you're teaching people when you interact with them. Really strong relationships are at the core of everything we do. We don't think about it enough. We don't talk about it enough because there's so much to do. But stopping to think about how the things that we're doing affect the relationships that we're building is super critical, both as a project manager and as a leader. How you treat someone that you don't need shows us who you really are. My best example for this is there's a company I know, I won't share who it is because I don't want to give away their secrets, but they have an interview process like many we've probably experienced, or many of us probably have, right? Several interviews that you go through, meeting different people. But there's another part of the interview process or the hiring process that they don't tell people about, and that is consulting with the administrative assistant who schedules all of the interviews and asking them what they think of this person. Because what they've found is that the way people treat the person that they don't have to be nice to says a lot about whether that person is a good fit for their values. So for us as project managers, one of the ways this has shown up for me is I was in a biz dev meeting, and when we won the business, one of the reasons one of the questions we asked was like, why? Why did you pick us? And a couple of the people on the client team said, you were the only, aside from being like literally the only pitch team that had women on it, they said, you are the only team that looked at all of us and not just our boss. So when you are in a project meeting, it's very easy to pay attention to the people who have power or who you think have the power, but how you act and interact with the people who don't have that power is more meaningful than how you act with the people who have power. And lastly, how you treat yourself tells us how to treat you. So this gets to the self-care stuff we were talking about yesterday. And I actually, I just texted to a friend of mine this morning. She was like, frantically like, oh, this day, and blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, when it feels like you can't possibly take a break, it's time to take a break. So I'm like, I know that you have a to-do list a mile long and you're freaking out and everything feels very important and everything feels high stakes. And some of the things that she's talking about, they actually are high stakes. I said, what you need to do first is take a 15-minute walk, go be around some trees, clear your head. Because what you're doing right now, when you feel like you can't possibly stop doing things, is when you have to stop doing things. Because you're just doing and you're not thinking about what you're doing or why. Some of this also is about boundaries. And as a project manager and as a leader, everybody's testing your boundaries all the time, right? They're figuring out, what can I get? What can I do? And it's your responsibility to know what your boundaries are and to enforce those boundaries. There are two kinds of boundaries that they talk about in therapy. One is a protective boundary. So this is what will I let you do and how much of that will I let in? And the other is a containing boundary. Both are important. The containing boundary is how do I manage myself? How do I self-edit so that I don't just dump everything on you? The containing boundary gets more and more important the more power you achieve in your career. The more senior you become, the more important a containing boundary is. I was having a conversation with a couple people yesterday about, for me now in my role, and Sam talked about this, right, that it takes your brain a while to see yourself as a leader, because you're just like, I'm just Megan, I'm like a project manager, whatever. But really everybody else is like, you're Megan the COO, you could fire me, I don't, so people see me in a different way than I see me. And I have to have that self-awareness that when I walk into a project team meeting and give a thought, give what I think is a suggestion, ask what I think is a question, what is heard is a direction. Megan said to do this. And what I've now done is I've robbed the team of their own self-motivation to do something. I've robbed them of their accountability for the outcome. Because when you say, why'd you do it that way? The answer is, because Megan told us to. They don't believe in it, they're just doing it because they thought they had to. So protective boundary, containing boundary, taking care of yourself, that teaches us how it's okay to treat you. If you work every night until 2 a.m., that teaches me that it's okay to email you at 2 a.m. because you're working anyway. All of the things that you do show us how to treat you. They show us how to treat your team. So think about the boundaries that you're setting. And remember that the more fried you are, the worse you are as a project manager, the worse you are as a leader. So I'm going to say it again. When it feels like you cannot possibly take a break, you must take a break. It feels very counterintuitive, and it's true. I learned it the hard way. Feature number 2 is walking the line between transparency and protection. So a really crappy project manager is the person who just shares everything with the team, right? Emails are just getting forwarded left and right. There's absolutely no filtering of what is coming to the team. When you are a great project manager, you are an effective buffer between the team and distractions. But understanding what's a distraction and what's beneficial information is really a black belt level skill. That takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of screwing it up. So practice thinking about what do I need to share with my team, what is beneficial for them, and what is a distraction. And I can't give you any advice about that except to practice and to ask for feedback at the end of a project or during a project. How is this going? Are you getting enough information? Are we missing anything? Am I giving you too much information? Is this too often too much? And as a leader, you have access to more information than anyone else on the team. And if you share too much, if you have too much transparency as a leader, it creates chaos, right? People are just like, oh my, there's just so much information. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what's meaningful to me, and therefore none of it is meaningful. But not enough information creates distrust. So if you're not telling people enough, they no longer trust you as a leader. So thinking about and practicing this idea of what is the right amount of transparency, what is a productive amount of transparency, and you don't have to be a leader to practice this. You practice it within your team as a project manager. Feature number 3 is delivering good news and bad news at the same velocity. Or bad news gets worse with age. So you have got to prepare the client and your team for the reality that somewhere along the way there's going to be bad news. I often do this in kickoff meetings with clients, which sounds very counterintuitive, but it's extremely effective. To say, at some point in this process, I'm going to have to tell you something you don't like. You're not going to like me very much, right? And at that point, it's like, that's the honeymoon meeting. Guys, this is the perfect time to say that, because they're like, you're so great. Oh, thanks for telling me that, right? 2 months later, I can say, remember when I told you you weren't going to like me? Today's the day. Here's what I got to tell you. It's going to cost more. It's going to take long, like whatever it is. This happens on every project, and we know it. So let's prepare the client for the fact that we're going to have a hard conversation at some point. I'm going to be a partner with you on it. I'm not just going to dump a problem on your lap. I'm going to come to you with solutions and ideas. I'm going to work with you on how we solve this problem. But make it clear that that's coming. And when you're taking the time to build good relationships and you're setting healthy boundaries and healthy expectations, this conversation becomes a whole lot easier. And as a leader, nothing undermines how people see you as a leader more than avoiding difficult conversations. So we have a guideline at Clockwork that bad news should be delivered within 24 hours. Again, it does not age well. This is not a fine wine or a French cheese. It's more like a diaper, right? You just gotta get rid of it, okay? So within 24 hours, if I have to talk to somebody because like, the way you handled that meeting wasn't great, like that has to happen within 24 hours. These conversations are not easy. It's hard. Nobody likes having a hard conversation. I don't care what kind of a leader you are, or like what level of leadership you're at, having a difficult conversation is gonna make you sweaty and uncomfortable. Here's a thing I do. I practice in my car. So when I have to have a difficult conversation with someone, I think about what I'm going to say, and here's why. You can rehearse something in your head or even write it down, like I'm going to email the things I'm going to say. And then the minute they come out of your mouth, you're like, that's fucked up. That is not what I meant to say, right? You have to hear yourself say it. So I drive in the car and I say it out loud. Every single time I find that the way that I thought I needed to say it is not the way I should say it. And it's like the worst case scenario is like my dog or my 9-year-old hears me screw it up, right? And I can like practice it again. Here's another thing you can do for homework. Are you all familiar with the show Fixer Upper? If you're not, guys, get your life together. So Chip and Joanna Gaines are a husband and wife. They're on HGTV. And they go in and they like fix up crappy houses. And they're just charming. And like, how does she get her hair to do that? No one knows, right? They're a national treasure. Anyway, watch their show because every single, like what they do is exactly the same as what we do, right? We go in with a beautiful vision of what we're gonna do and how much it's gonna cost, and yes, you're gonna get a porch, and you're gonna get a new kitchen. Yeah, you're gonna have that farmer sink, and you're gonna like all these things, like stainless steel, obviously. Marble countertops, yes. Halfway through the project, they smash through a wall and like all the plumbing is rusted. And now they're like, okay, there goes like 20 grand or whatever. I don't know what the numbers are. I just watch for the after pictures. But there's bad news. There's bad news. And when they deliver this bad news, she's usually the one that ends up delivering it, typical. When they deliver this bad news, she's apologetic about it, but she's not, she doesn't take total responsibility for it. And what I find in our industry is that when we have to have these conversations, we feel like guilty about it. We're like, oh, we discovered this thing we didn't know, and like, I mean, I guess we'll just do it, and like, won't charge you because like we didn't know and you didn't know. No, it's no different than remodeling a house, and you're like, hey, new information, what are we gonna do? Turns out you're gonna have to choose between the porch or the bathroom. Or we could do this instead of that. Like, watch this show for tips on how to deliver difficult news. And also for just like a delightful marriage in action, right? As a divorced person, I'm like, oh, I want a chip. Okay. Okay, feature number 4, communicating with context and clarity. Short emails are a work of art. I'm going to show you an example of one in a minute. So as a project manager, you have to remember that no one, literally no one, not even the client, is thinking about this project as much as you are. No one. You're thinking about when you go to bed, you're thinking about it when you're like watching TV on a Saturday, like, right, there's things about the project that are in your head. It's a big deal. If you're doing this job really, really well, like, we care. What this means, though, is that it's really easy for us to communicate with people in a way that feels like we're picking up a conversation in the middle of a sentence. Because it makes sense in our heads, because we've been thinking about it for 3 days straight. So when we send the email, it's just like, what are they talking about? And the same is true as a leader, right? You're in all of these conversations and all these meetings that no one else is in, and then you walk into a totally different room full of people. You assume everybody knows all of the background and context that you know, and you say something that you think is a very straightforward statement, and you don't realize that you've just dropped like an atom bomb on the step, because they're like, where did that come from? So I think Sue's talked about this yesterday too, like the context and clarity. There's like 4 C's of diamonds. These are the 2 C's of emails, context and clarity. So here's an example. This email really should be in the goddamn Louvre. And Brittany, where are you? Raise your hand. Brittany wrote this email. She's my coworker. So part of my role at Clockwork is I review contracts. And so let's just like unpack this email for a minute. What Brittany tells me is, hey, we're preparing to launch this integration. Here's what we currently have. We don't have an MSA, don't have a SaaS agreement in place, need to send that over. Here's what I had to do. Talk to Angie. She's our director of technology. So I know she's consulted with Angie on the SOW. In bold, can you reveal both documents, confirm whether my revisions are acceptable, and if they're approved to route, boom, 2 links, in bullets, thanks, bye. So going back to what I said about what we do being invisible, to the untrained eye, that's an email. And you go, cool, yeah, contracts look good, thanks, bye, you move on. Because I have done this before, I looked at this and I was like, Brittany spent some time on this. She gave me every single piece of information that I needed. She used not one extra word. There's like not an extra word in here. It's so concise. She gave me all the background, she gave me a clear action, and she gave me access to the things that I needed to take that action. So for me, who has been in the shoes of a project manager, it was really interesting for me because I was like, I'm getting project managed right now. I like it. This feels good. So what I felt in this email was I felt cared for. Like, she knows I'm busy, so she's not like, how are you? How are the kids? Your dog is cute. Like, we can have that conversation when we have coffee, but she knows that I'm ripping through my email. She also knows that she needs to get me to do something, and I'm her boss. So she can't just say, like, please take care of this, or like she has to take care of me, and I felt cared for. Now, do you want to know what 80% of the emails that I get look like when I have to review a contract? They look like a giant email thread with a bunch of attachments embedded God knows where, with intros like FYI, see below, thoughts, question mark? Fuck that, oh my God. Like, if you are doing that to your team members as a project manager, stop. You're emotionally abusing the people around you when you say just like, read thread below. No, you read the thread below. That's your job. Tell me what I have to care about in that thread. So, we will never be recognized for emails like this. No one will ever, aside from what just happened to Brittany right now, which will probably never happen to her again in her career, no one's gonna put your email up on a screen and get 300 people to admire it, but this is what we have to do with each other. So if you need validation for just an absolute piece of art email, forward it to me. Redact what you need to redact, but just be like, Megan, can you believe this? Or like, come up with a buddy in this room where you can send an example of this and be like, can you believe this? I only used 20 words. Look at how much I communicated, right? Like we need to give that validation to each other because no one else is gonna do it. And it's really easy at the end of the day as a project manager when you go home and somebody's like, what'd you do today? You're like, oh, sent a lot of emails, right? It's kind of hard sometimes to feel proud of that. But you should, if they're emails like this, like you're doing your job, you're doing it well. So, context and clarity. Feature number 5, don't suck time. So, have you guys seen The Princess Bride? There's this like machine and it like literally sucks the life out of you. It's just called the machine. I thought it had a name and then I realized like, no, it's just called the machine. So, this is basically meetings. But meetings aren't really the problem. There's companies who are like, we outlawed meetings, we don't do meetings. Meetings aren't the problem. That's like when people are like, we don't let people use Facebook at work. Like, Facebook's not the problem. The problem is you have disengaged employees who would rather be on Facebook than doing their work, right? So don't kill the messenger. Meetings themselves are not the problem. Really crappy meetings are. And this is another really important part of our job because we have meetings all the time. We are organizing them, we are hosting them, we are running them. Understanding how to effectively manage a meeting is really hard. It's really essential. Think carefully about who to invite, who not to invite. And let me tell you, that is a losing game. Because when you invite people to meetings, they're pissed because they just got invited to another meeting. When you don't invite people to a meeting, they're pissed because why am I getting left out of this meeting? You literally cannot win, which means you have to manage expectations for people and say, hey, I'm organizing this meeting, I'm not inviting you because we're talking about this. If you want to come, let me know. Or I'm not inviting you because, but like whatever, communicate to people. Communicate to people, because when they don't have the information, they will make it up. And what they make up will be like, they're trying to cut me out of the project. I guess they just don't care about design. Right? Like, or whatever. Fill in the discipline, right? So also understanding, like, you should go into every meeting with an agenda. Let me revise that and say, you can go into a meeting without an agenda as long as you have an objective. I would much rather have an objective. So when I go into a meeting and I'm not clear on why we're there, the question I ask is, what are we trying to do and how are we going to know when we're done? Because that's all I care about. I don't care about if we make it to the 30-minute mark or the 60-minute mark or the 90-minute mark or whatever arbitrary period of time we decided on. Why are we here and when will we know we're done? Because if we get that done in 15 minutes, cool. Give me 15 minutes of my life back. So really thinking about, I like to think about meetings as customer experience, right? Like so many of us in our roles now are thinking about customer experience. So as a project manager, everyone who's attending your meeting is your customer. What kind of customer experience are you giving them from end to end? How are you setting up the meeting? What time are you scheduling the meeting? If it's at noon, for the love of God, tell me if you're gonna provide lunch or not. Provide lunch. Unless you work for the government, I know you can't, whatever, fine, we'll all brown bag it. But be clear about what to expect. Over-communicate. Communicate more than you need to about it. We get like one wild and precious life, right? Like every minute, I am literally sucking minutes of your time right now. I am, and I take that really seriously. This is why I wasn't at the party last night, right? Like I really wanted to go, the pictures look really fun, but I was like, no, it's my job to take 45 minutes of these people's life and make it the best 45 minutes of their day. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job, and you don't get those 45 minutes back. This is it. So I wanna make them good minutes. You should take meetings as seriously. There's a blog post by Mike Montero, and there's a link to it here. You should read the entire thing. But this is so real. So first of all, what he talks about in this article I think is really essential, which is there's a UX problem with calendars, which is they appear to be empty buckets which need to be filled. And that is wrong. Those buckets are already filled, and every time we schedule a meeting, we're taking something away from people. So God, I love the raw energy of this. Subtracting an hour from the life of another human being isn't to be taken lightly, it's almost violent. Oh my God, think about your meetings as an act of violence, and you will think about them, you'll think about managing and scheduling them differently. It's certainly invasive, that's true. I'm adding a meeting should really be, I'm subtracting an hour of your life. So as a project manager, as a leader, think about, how am I making this time worthwhile? Is it worth what I'm doing to subtract an hour, a minute, 15 minutes from this person's life? Okay, feature number 6. I need to hurry up. Brave the wilderness or the cheese stands alone. So years ago, actually at the DPM UK Summit, somebody asked me in the audience Q&A, like, who's the project manager loyal to, the client or the team? And my answer was that as PMs, our loyalty is to the project and to ourselves. Which means that sometimes we're going to be in conflict with the client. Sometimes we're going to be in conflict with the team. Sometimes we got to just piss off everybody, and that is another thing that makes this job lonely. But ultimately, we were asked to be the steward of the project, to make something happen, and it's our job to make that thing happen. And sometimes the client is going to get in the way of themselves, the team is going to get in our way, and it's our job to have that confidence of standing alone, of having the integrity to say, this is the right thing to do, and I know it pisses you off, but this is what we have to do. So it means telling people the truth when it's hard. It means calling people out on their BS. This is true as a leader too. You're often going to find yourself in the center of conflict, and being able to be the person who is fair, who can mitigate conflict between departments and between people is really essential. You, both as a project manager and as a leader, will observe passive aggressiveness. It's your job to call it out. It's your job to shine a light on it. It's your job to mine for conflict. Here's a way you do this as a project manager. When you're in a meeting, decisions are getting made. You can feel in the room when not everyone is on board with this decision. Sometimes you can see it on a face. You just pick up the vibe. It's your job to call that out. Say like, hey, what's going on with that face? It doesn't seem like you agree with this direction. Like, tell us more. Tell us more. It's hard, and you have to do it, because what happens if you leave a room with a decision that not everyone is bought into, no one is accountable for the result when it goes totally haywire. And I know all of you have seen this show up, right? You're in a meeting, you make the decision, you write the decision down in the meeting notes, yay, problem solved. As you're walking out of the room, one person says to another person, like, oh, that's never gonna work. Okay, what that means is that when things go sideways, it's not their problem. They knew it was never gonna work. They have to say that in the meeting, and they're not going to, and it's your job to get them to. You have to have that conflict on the table. Your homework for this is to read this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's gonna take you a couple hours tops. I also, in the slide, linked to like a 30-minute video where the author just kind of gives you an overview, which is a perfectly acceptable cheat. But do it. This will teach you how to create a healthy team, and that's your job as a project manager, even if you're existing inside an unhealthy culture. 7, I swear I'm going fast, Brett. How bad am I doing? Bad, it's bad. Brett's like just sweating, like those Kathy cartoons. Okay, I'm gonna hurry. Okay, take note of the leaders around you. Observe what good and bad leaders do, and think about how you're going to do that in the most authentic way to you. I don't know if any of you, I know most of you are new to this conference, but if you've been to this conference before, you've seen Nancy Lyons speak. She's the CEO of Clockwork. She and I sometimes speak a lot together. She's awesome. She's amazing. Like, as amazing as she is as a speaker, she's an even better leader. I love her. I've been working with her on and off for 17 years. I made the mistake of thinking for a long time that for me to be a good leader meant I had to be like her. And I'm not her. And so it created a lot of internal conflict with myself around like, well, I'm not doing it her way. And it took me a long time to realize there are things that she is doing that I can do in a way that's authentic to myself, and that's what makes me a good leader. So it's not about reading a leadership book and copying all the direction that you hear. It's not about looking at a leader you admire and copying everything they do. It's about observing what they do and figuring out how you actually exhibit and inhabit those behaviors in a way that's authentic to who you are. So one of my coworkers, he has started doing this for himself, and these are his literal notes. He came to me about a month ago and he said, so I've been watching you in meetings. And I was like, dude, that's creepy. But he was like, I've been taking note of the things you do that I think make you a good leader, and the things that Nancy does, and that when I see people and they're doing things I admire. So I'm not saying this has to be your list, but I was so charmed that he literally took notes, and now he's thinking about how do I do these things in a way that's authentic to me. So take literal notes. Oh, there's a bug. This is not feature 7, it's feature 8. Okay, so ask for what you want, lead first, title second. I have the job of COO because I was talking to a friend. She said, what do you do? I described it to her, and she's like, oh, you're basically the COO. And I was like, mm-hmm. And then I went home and Googled it, and I was like, shit, you're right, I am. So I asked for that job, and I put together a deck, and I said, here's what it would look like for me to be COO, and here's why I should have that job. But the only reason I got it was because I was already doing the things. So to be a leader does not mean getting a specific title. It means leading. Lead first. Do the actions first. The title comes later. Some of the ways that you can do this is so your homework, keep a running list of your accomplishments. You can do this in your email, whatever tool you use, but every time you do something that makes you proud, that has value, write it down. You're gonna use that list when you ask for a promotion. You're gonna use that list when you ask for a raise. You're gonna use that list when you're having a crappy day and you don't wanna get out of bed and you're like, what do I do? I'm a garbage person. That list is gonna remind you that there are lots of good things that you do. And ask those that you trust. Sam talked about this yesterday, asking people like, what is it that I do that you appreciate, that I'm good at? Because once you're able to see, going back to that invisible thing we talked about at the beginning, you have to be able to see what you're good at. And you have to recognize that so you can help other people see it. No one's gonna see it for you. And part of the issue with being good at things is sometimes you don't even know that you're good at them. So, here's your leadership MVP, our 8 features. I added the 9th because it's funny. Your title, like it's extra funny when you have to tell someone something's funny. I don't know if you guys know that. Okay, your title may be project manager, but you are a leader. And you lead with influence, not with title. Which means that you are learning in the best and hardest way how to be a good leader. You're not relying on status and title, but instead you're inspiring people to follow you. So I want you to believe that, and I want you to lead your teams and yourself to success. Thank you.